Siki, it gives me a great pleasure in inviting you all to the interactive session on Character 2020 with the theme of facilitating trade and administration of rules of origin. We will start today's session with the welcome address. I request Mr. Naveen Kolathur, Chairman, Siki Supply Chain Management Committee, to deliver the welcome address of the session. In this brief note, I'm introducing the Chairman. Mr. Naveen has been in the logistic industry for the past 2 decades and worked for DHL in several roles and various geographies around the world. And he is currently part of DHL Lead Logistics Service for Asia Pacific since 2012. I welcome you, sir. Chairman, I request you to take it of the session, please.
Thank you, Ms. Saranya. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks also for organizing this, right? So appreciate the effort there. Welcome everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. I think becomes the first order of the day to make sure everybody is healthy and hale. So welcome to this session on Friday afternoon. We understand you could be doing million other things on a Friday afternoon rather than sitting on a Siki event. So we really, appreciate your time, to join this session. Quickly, one of the fascinating things about the pandemic, beyond the devastation, for me at a personal level, is for the first time my father and my father-in-law understood what I actually do. Supply chain was, and many of you can, understand and appreciate what I'm talking about, right? They just didn't know what I was doing, right? I think, while life was at a complete standstill, one of the industries that kept it moving, whether feeding people or clothing people or bringing them food, was supply chain and logistics, right? So I think, a lot of, focus on the industry, and particularly in India, I think we are at a tipping point, right? A lot of action, a lot of talent, a lot of initiatives by the government, etc. So this is the first event by this newly formed SCM committee at Siki, and I appreciate all my colleagues as part of the committee, to be part of it and actively participating, right? Quickly going through the agenda, we have a packed agenda with a lot of eminent speakers. Personally, I'm looking forward to learn a lot. I think supply chain is one of the industries where nobody can ever claim that they know everything, right? So we learn every day. There's a new thing to happen. So we have a lot of experts who are going to address us today on various topics. So introducing the different people who will be addressing today. First off, Mr. Naveen Prakash, right, co-chair of the SCI SCM committee at Siki. After dealing with over 2,000 MSMEs, I think rest of your resume, Mr. Naveen, doesn't make any sense, right? There is nothing that you will not have gone through. As an entrepreneur for the last 15 years, leading LCL provider with global logistics, building a network business with lots of branches and employees around India, and a brief stint in the corporate world as well. I think Mr. Naveen Prakash, if anything, has lots and lots of experience and knowledge about the logistics industry. So thank you for being part of the committee and helping us, on the various agenda topics. In terms of our expert panels, right? We have Mr. B. Sriram, who, in addition to helping us today, is also the, chairperson of the taxation committee at Siki. Mr. Sriram, thank you very much for your support. Mr. Sriram comes, again with lots and lots of experience. Currently he's, working with the Ernst & Young in Chennai in the indirect taxes department, and has previously worked with other big 5 consulting companies, right? So he has all the credentials to talk on this topic. And I also understood yesterday that he's one of the very active SICI committees on supporting other committees. Thank you for your help today. Then we have Miss Smita Singh. She is unable to join us today due to urgency, but I believe we have some video content from her where she will be sharing her views. Miss Smita Singh is part of. She's a partner at Singh and Associates, and she has various topics that she is expert in. She represents customers on GST topics and previously indirect taxes. She has experience cut across various industries, right? Whether it is gas, defense, hospitality. She has represent customers in all different areas and specializes in taxes, right? So she has a video content that she has shared. We thank her for her support with the event. Next, gives me pleasure to introduce Mr. Bharadwaj, colleague from DHL and also an expert, right? Retired customs official, person who knows firsthand how customs works, and currently the regional head of customs with DHL. Thank you, Mr. Bharadwaj, for your support for the event, right? Then we have Mr. Ravi Shekhar Jha, who has a lot of experience in EXIM, right? With Alcatel, with Alstom. Apologies there, with Alstom, and currently with SJ, companies, right? So he has a lot of experience and specializes in this area of EXIM, right? So exports, imports. He has managed for several MNCs and has done a lot of work in that area. So thank you very much for your support. And last but not least, we also have a person, Mr. Malar Vannan, who is the additional general manager at MMTC, who deals with these issues firsthand, right, as an importer. So glad to have you, Mr. Malar Vannan, to share your experience on this topic, right? It's an interesting topic. I must admit, when the topic was brought in, I had no clue about it. I was first time hearing it. In fact, I had to, message Mr. Naveen Prakash, what is this, right? Literally. And since then, I have come around and understood what it is, right? And doing some basic Google searches, there is all kinds of debates whether this character rule makes sense, don't make sense. There are merits and demerits around this topic, right? Everybody has a view. But one thing I have understood, when working in supply chain and logistics, right? Compliance is paramount. So, we can all debate whether we like something or not, but being compliant is good for business. So, our attempt today is to educate you, answer your questions, share knowledge and experience, and hopefully that will help you. Request everybody's participation in answering questions, asking questions, and hopefully you can take away additional knowledge, which I'm keenly looking forward for. Thank you and welcome everyone. Ms. Saranya?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your welcome remarks. Now I request Mr. B. Sriram, Chairman, SICI Taxation Committee, to give the introductory address. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Sharanya. Thank you, Chairman Supply Chain, Mr. Naveen Kolathur, Naveen Prakash, and every other member of the Supply Chain Committee, and all the participants. Good afternoon. Like many other events which SICI has been spearheading, I'm sure this one is also an event which people would look out for. Primarily for the reason that today we are in the midst of post-pandemic situation, and we are trying to, pull our strings to ensure that the engine of economy is moving forward. So anything which is going to hinder the propulsion of this engine is going to be not looked very favorably, and that's the context in which we will see every regulatory development in this country. And Carator is one particular mechanism which has been brought for various reasons, I'm sure. But it's as the chairman rightly mentioned, it's one of the complaints required today. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts about how this is going to impact generally the business in this country. And also, I'm not going to get into the details of the Carator because it's more of a supply chain related aspects, and there are speakers who are going to talk about it after me in detail about some of these intricacies of this Carator. But what I would like to talk about is how the importer is going to financially get impacted, what kind of preparation they should be doing to handle this Carator, which is there since September 2020 onwards. So, Sharanya, you are running the presentation, or should I share?
I'm doing it, sir. I'll share.
Okay. Right. Okay, so I have 15-20 minutes. I'll just quickly run through this presentation. Basically, Carator is a customs administration rule applicable for any import which are happening under free trade agreement, and most of the importers by now must be familiar that India has entered into several free trade agreement, bilateral, multilateral, plurilateral agreements with several countries, including ASEAN. And this has been for the last so many years. We have with ASEAN, we have with Thailand, we have with Sri Lanka, we have several such free trade agreement, including Korea and so on and so forth. So this has been there for quite some time in the country, which basically provides for some kind of concessional rate, a preferential rate. If the importer in India imports from these countries and such import qualifies under the free trade agreement for the preferential rate. So this is the requirement of the free trade agreement. But over a period of time, what had happened is there were several instances which the government found out that for the importer to import from the trade agreement countries, there must have been some amount of origination requirement in that country, because what happens is we have entered into an agreement with different countries with the view to encourage manufacturing in that country and then import from that country in a preferential rate. But it so happened that we figured out as we moved along the journey of free trade agreement over a period of last few decades that there were several instances of people moving and beating around the origin requirements of the respective country. I will talk about quickly what is the origin requirement. That's not the core of my presentation today. But basically, for an importer in India to import under the free trade agreement, claiming the preferential rate, the importer has to get a certificate of origin from the exporter from that country, claiming that that particular product has been originating or is manufactured, or the regional value content in that particular country has been whatever has been applicable, for example, 35%, and there is a change in the customs tariff classification in that country, so on and so forth. So the whole host of requirement to prove that the imported goods from that country is originating from that country. So that's the bare de minimis expectation of the importer, and the importer is required to file what is called a certificate of origin certificate from the exporting country. So this has been the requirement of the free trade agreements. We have correspondingly what we have as rules of origin as part of the customs requirement, and also we have tariff rates applicable for every line item which are coming under the preferential rate category. So this is the framework. Now what had happened is from 21st of September 2020, the government has implemented what is called as this Carator rule by introducing a section in Customs Act sorry, it's not section 28AB, it's 28DA, read with CARATA rules which has been implemented to implementize this particular provision of the Customs Act. Basically, as I have told, when an importer imports, the certificate of origin will be filed with the customs authority in the country, in India, and the customs authority will have only one way of verifying the certificate of origin, which is government to government. Assuming that the importer imports from Thailand, then there will be a designated authority in Thailand. The customs authority through the board, through the nodal agency, will reach out to the verification and do the verification with the Thailand authority about the genuineness of the certificate of origin. This has been the requirement, and that is called government to government. But with the introduction of CARATA rule, what had happened is the government said that instead of only having one mechanism of reaching out to government, we also want to create one more layer of checking, whereby the importer himself is now put under a onus to establish that the certificate of origin is genuine, and towards that there are a lot of declarations and information which are to be possessed and given by the importer. So that's one important change. So as against the verification, now importer is given an opportunity. That's fundamental change which has happened with the CARATA coming in. Earlier, the certificate of origin was the only document required. After CARATA introduction, certificate of origin is not sufficient to absolve the importer from the liability of proving that the imported items originates from the exporting country and fulfills the requirement of certificate of origin in that country. So it extends beyond what an importer has been doing in terms of its roles and responsibility. The CARATA rules as well as the provision also contains a provision whereby the importer can relinquish his right in claiming this preferential rate, basis which the customs authority, both the faceless assessment as well as the PAG, can go ahead and assess the bill of entry without allowing the preferential trade rate. So there is a relinquishment of right provision also contained in both the provision of law as well as the rules. And finally, basis the verification, basis the information made available, basis the claim, and basis the satisfaction of the customs officer, the preferential rate claimed by the importer can be allowed or disallowed by the customs authority. So this is how the structure of framework of the CARATA has been implemented in this country through this mechanism. Next slide, please. So, as I have explained, the red ones here in this slide are the ones which are the newly introduced provision. The black ones, which have been mentioned in the slide, are the pre-CARATA rule requirement for any importer to import under the free trade agreement with a certificate of origin. So basically, what has changed after the introduction of CARATA has been that the importer is put under much more onus and obligation to prove that the imported goods are actually eligible for the preferential trade rate, and it is not only with the certificate of origin, but the importer is put under much more obligation to go and understand whether the certificate of origin is issued by the exporter after verifying about its eligibility, about the exporter's eligibility to issue the certificate of origin. So towards that, there are declarations to be made in the bill of entry. There are information to be possessed by the importer, and there is a form called Form I, which needs to be maintained by the importer. I'm sure the subsequent speakers will speak about it in detail. I'm not getting into it. Next slide, please. So what are the practical challenges and issues that are getting faced by the importers? After the introduction of CARATA, what had happened is there is towards that implementation, necessary changes have been made even in the EDI system to pick up through the RMS, risk-based management system, pick up certain bills to verify for the certificate of origin and the preferential rate. What had happened is, since this is a very onerous and detailed procedure which has been prescribed to prove the claim of the preferential rate, many times the import could not be cleared on time, and the time frame prescribed are quite long. For example, they can pick up any import consignment and then ask for detail with the importer. The importer is asked to give the information within 10 days. Then within 45 days, the assessing authority can look into it. And then if they are not satisfied, they can go back to the verifying authority. So there's a whole host of timeline which have been prescribed, which makes the process quite tedious as well as quite business disruptive. Okay, and at an age where we are talking about real-time clearances of goods in the customs, and the dwell time being talked about is practically a few hours before it is being cleared. We have this kind of procedure to prove that the claim of a preferential rate takes a onerous time for the importer to prove, and that cost quite a bit of business disruptions. To overcome this also, there were certain other alternatives provided, namely that the importer is allowed to clear the goods in case if the claim is temporarily suspended, to clear the goods with a provisional duty bond and a bank guarantee. This again led to the cash flow blockages for the importer at a time when the working capital is at a crunch for the importing community. Then considering this kind of complexity, many times we found that the importers have been clearing the goods under the merit rate without opting for, or after opting for preferential rate, but figuring out that this is going to take a time, they relinquish the right to go for the preferential rate and then opt for the merit rate. This is also another thing which we have seen. And possession of Form I related information alone was also found to be not sufficient. And there were several piecemeal questions being asked, particularly since the imports are now covered under the faceless assessment. Somebody from some other part of the country will ask these questions and then to upload those documents and then still not able to convince. So all of those back and forth communications have been happening. And some of the information sought or will be sought by the customs includes confidential information relating to vendors, relating to production process of vendors, and so on and so forth. So basically forcing the importer to get into provisional assessment and many times getting into an incurring demurrage and storage cost because of the fact that he could not clear the goods timely. Next slide, please. So the same thing has been depicted here in the form of a chart. Basically, how the importer moves through post the introduction of Carator, and eventually forcing the importer to either go for provisional assessment or relinquish the right to go for preferential rate and going for a merit rate. So this has been the trend we have seen many times. Of course, wherever the importer is quite prepared in terms of possession of Form I related details and possession of the data that is required, he has been able to clear with the preferential rate. But wherever the importer is not prepared, and considering the fact that the data requirement is quite onerous, many importers we found are not prepared to provide this information. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. So basically, what are the options then available? So I'm not getting into Carator fully. I'm sure some other speakers will cover. What are the options that are available for importers to work upon after filing for a preferential rate, and assuming that the preferential rate is not accepted or it is taking time and so on and so forth. But before that, just exactly 1 year before the introduction of Carator, in 2019 September, the Supreme Court pronounced a particular judgment in the case of ITC. Very landmark judgment, very important judgment. It said that an importer cannot simply file for refund after filing for assessment without appealing against the assessment. So there have been a spate of judgments over a period of last more than a decade on this particular point as to whether an importer, after he himself, without disputing a particular classification, can litigate and file for refund saying that I have paid excess duty, was litigated on several judgments, including Priya Blue Industries, Flock Industries, and recently in the case of Micromax, Intex, and finally ITC overruled the Delhi High Court judgments in Micromax and so on and so forth to hold that an importer, particularly we are in a situation where importer is allowed self-assessment. We are no more after 2011. We are in a regime called self-assessment regime where importer can self-assess his duty. So after that 2011 amendment, after self-assessment allowed to the importer, the Supreme Court has held that an importer, after self-assessing himself, cannot file a refund claim under Section 27, but he needs to file an appeal against the assessed bills of entry. And after getting the appeal allowed, only he can come back and ask for refund if the appellate authority holds the refund eligibility for the importer. So this is the sum and substance of the Supreme Court judgment. So in case if an importer files for a bills of entry claiming the preferential rate, and because of the fact that he is not able to produce a document or give the information sought by the customs authority, if he chooses to relinquish his right and then opt for going for merit rate, then the only option available to him is to go for reassessment or go for an appeal against the bills of entry. In case if they are not relinquished and simply given a letter saying that in view of the fact that there is so much of detail being asked and not able to produce, we would like to be assessed under the merit rate, and then the importer went ahead and then paid the merit rate, then he can still go for maybe a refund under Section 27. So this is the sum and substance of the Supreme Court judgment which I wanted to point out here. Next slide, please. So the options available are either reassessment or appeal. As part of the faceless assessment also, even Chennai Commissionerate has issued circulars saying that before out of charge and after out of charge also, there are situations where reassessments are permissible and amendment of bill of entry is permissible under Section 149. So reassessments can be invoked, as well as in those cases where relinquishment of right has been conceded by the importer, they can go for appeal. And in the appeal, they can claim that they are actually eligible for the merit, the preferential rate. However, due to various reasons, they could not prove, and then get the appeal allowed, and then go for reassessment and refund of the additional duty paid as against the preferential rate. So this is the whole context of options available to an importer. Next slide, please. So just to stay on that, there are two key free trade agreement we are looked into. One is relating to Korea, the other is relating to Japan. There are references given in the slide with regard to the notification corresponding. Both these agreements provide for an option of a particular transactions which are not accorded a preferential rate for various reasons, including the reasons that the importer could not produce the COO on time, or because of the customs could not accord the preferential rate for any reason. Both these agreements provide for a refund mechanism within a year in the case of Korea CEPA, and similar one in the case of Japan. An option to the importer to go for a refund of the additional duty paid, which is the difference between the preferential rate and the merit rate. However, and most of these trade agreement provisions are also replicated in the customs corresponding notification. So it has the backing of the customs law as well. So there is also an option to be explored wherever the certificate of origin could not be produced on time, that the importer can go back to the customs and ask for refund under Section 27. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the major points to be noted by an importer is, in case if importer could not prepare himself well for complying with the CAROTA rules, then the consequences are as follows. He can be denied the preferential rate under the CAROTA rules. He may be subjected to a provisional assessments where the importer will be required to give bank guarantee, bond, surety, so on and so forth. There could be investigation in case if the importer is not able to satisfactorily provide data. The customs can investigate even into the past transaction of the importer. In fact, up to 5 years, the verification can be taken by the customs. So that level of power the customs have retained with themselves. At extreme situations where the importer and the exporters have colluded in furnishing the COO for a wrong claim, a confiscation of goods are also possible by the customs. Future benefit to be assuming that the customs temporarily suspends the importer preferential rate. Future benefit can be provided only prospectively and not for the earlier bills of entry. There is another provision in CAROTA rules which provides for that. Penal actions are possible if there is a suppression, misrepresentation, etc., etc. And then compulsory verification of all subsequent bills of entry in case importer doesn't possess information on the basis of which he claimed the preferential rate. That is also something which can come through. And identical goods import from the same exporter of the same country of the same goods by any other importer in the country will also be denied. So these are some of the consequences, as we can see, can happen if the importer is not prepared well for handling the CAROTA operations. Next slide, please. So lastly, some of the key takeaway is that an importer has to exercise reasonable care to ensure accuracy and truthfulness of the documents produced. Importer shall possess information as indicated in Form I, including the production process, the value addition content in the exporting country, and so on and so forth. Very, very detailed set of information which needs to be ascertained and possessed. At least 5 years documents needs to be maintained and kept by the importer. Knowledge of the production process, posing the right questions to the vendors, so on and so forth. I'm sure that many of the companies are not equipped to do all of these that are required by an importer to comply with the CAROTA rules. And then, of course, for every import, though the law doesn't require for every import, Form I needs to be prepared and kept by the importer, whether is asked by the customs or not. And it should be prepared and kept before filing the bill of entry, not after filing the bill of entry. Otherwise, what will happen is, if the customs authority asks for some of the information, then at that time you will not be able to prepare Form I and you will be running around and it will be delaying the import clearances. The most important thing will be to train the supply chain team about the CAROTA rules, to train the vendors, to understand with regard to each of the type of imports, what are the value addition, what are the content of this imported item in the originating country, and various other details as are required. And also hold the document for 5 years, get the information, train the CHA as to what document needs to be filed, and also understand that this is going to be time-consuming process and it may not happen as it otherwise usually happens for even in AEO importer for that matter. So it's a very, very long drawn winding up process which has been put in place by the customs authority. If not handled well, the consequences which have been mentioned in my slides will follow through. And accordingly, this assumes a very, very significant compliance for the importer, particularly importer who are importing under the free trade agreement, claiming preferential trade. And this has really created a furor in the country. And in fact, if media has to be looked at, a Japanese delegation went up to the Prime Minister office to say that the mechanism put forth should be in consonance with the trade agreement. It cannot be, taking a departure from the trade agreement. So it is causing a lot of anguish. It leads to loss of, competitiveness on imports, and it is a very time-consuming process. So it requires a lot of attention of the importer. So with that, I will stop here, Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable inputs. Due to some unavoidable reasons, Smita has not come on the live session. So she has shared the video. I'll just play the video, please.
Saranya, volume is not coming.
Yes, Ms. Saranya, there's no volume.
Due to some technical problem, so just play the video once Mr. Bharadwaj sir speaks. Can I?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Yeah, Mr. Bharadwaj, you're able to do that?
Now I request Mr. Bharadwaj Ramaswamy, Regional Head, Customs, DL, to give the address. I welcome you, sir.
Hope my screen is visible.
Sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Bharadwaj.
Yes, it's indeed pleasure, Mr. Naveen and Mr. Sriram sir, and all the other learned people in the gathering. Indeed, I'm very happy to be here today because we know that in the order of events of ease of doing business, introducing a corridor type of regulation or rules will definitely have endurance, not only what you call with respect to detention and damage, it hits the entire tat of dwell time. You can take when I go and see the changes, whatever they have made, it is going to be a practical session or presentation. Sriram sir, you have covered the entire law very nicely. I think I will straight away go to the subject. And you all know that CARATOR is introduced. Of course, it is Section 28 DA was introduced in the Finance Act of Finance Act 2020, on which the notification 81 of 2020, the CARATOR rules are notified, followed by the CBIC Circular 38 of 2020, giving the guidelines of implementation of this CARATOR. Of course, there are two more references that I have mentioned here. Is the letter by CBIC to all the chief commissioners, principal commissioners, and commissioner of customs on the difficulties being faced by the trade in getting the things done, as Mr. Sriram sir was specifically mentioning. Though the rules give very clear indication, the Form I or Form 1 should not be called in each and every case. What happened? It all started from Mumbai Custom House. It then slowly it spread over the entire country. The initial issue of bank guarantee and bond was insisted at Mumbai Customs. From there, the I will say, it's like Corona, it has spread everywhere. And every custom house now is, they are not in the position to take a decision, even though you submit Form 1. That is the position where we are. And as Mr. Sriram sir said, the details in Form 1 is not that simple. It needs a thorough knowledge to understand the entire process, but also to understand the materials which have gone into manufacture of that particular goods. With that, I wanted to go to Section 20, it's issued on 17/12, which gives instructions to the departments. And if you ask me whether all these things are implemented or not in stations, I would say I will leave it to your best judgment, because you all know what is happening in the trade, and as an association, you will be getting a lot of grievances from the trading public, that the way in which the department is acting on this. Going further, see, I am very much into the subject on particular issues. I think this will help you in positioning yourself before Customs Department to understand the basic requirement, as Mr. Sriram sir was specifying in his slide. Basic thing is, in Corridor rule, you need to know Rule 3, Rule 4. Rule 3 is a claim. Claim means what? I have a certificate in possession issued by the competent authority in country of origin, and notification, FTA or preferential rate of duty or unilateral or bilateral agreement before the proper officer with a certificate which is approved format. In this, I would like to clarify technically that there would be two notifications. One would be the revenue notification, which gives you the percentage of preferential rate. The second one is a non-tariff notification, which talks about the procedure and the manner in which the goods are treated under that particular agreement. These both have to be read in tandem and with each other. It can't be read in isolation. Why I say this is, if you the DPC, when I claim, what I am claiming that this particular good, say for example, I take an Asian agreement. The notification is 46 of 2011, XYZ is a serial number under which your customs tariff head falls. Then I go and claim the preferential rate. For doing so, when I submit a certificate, it has got a specific criteria called origin criterion. The origin criterion is the basic element based on which the goods would become eligible for notification. This fact, I don't know how we are going to, many importers in the past, I will say that the past 2.5 months, I have not seen one clear Form 1 submitted by any importer. So this is the fact. That's what the last slide of Sriram sir has got more value, saying that the training for importer, their associates, and also to the customs broker is mandatory here. I can go on tell you technically many things, but let me confine to myself, and I will, maximum possible, I will cover many things. Okay, first is Rule 3, under which I go and claim. Everything has to be claimed. Once I claim, department has got the power to reject straight away under certain circumstances. The circumstances are defined under Rule 3. Okay, I have submitted I have claimed under Rule 3. Then it makes me to present certain documents on request by the department or on query from the department. That is Rule 4. Wherein you need to demonstrate. Under 4, you need to declare certain important elements at item level. Say, for example, if you take automobile customers, they have 1,000 line items for which FTA is claimed. Now, earlier it used to be a single tagging of FTA certificate with a particular invoice in EasyJet. Today, for each line item, we have to key in 6 additional parameters and link that FTA at item level. For the time, how much it has taken. If a person is coming with 1,000 line items and with one FTA, it will take minimum 5 hours to prepare a checklist. This is one major, I will say, hit to the trade. No item wise, it's fine, but they should have considered by attaching the same in bill of entry level. Now, Adding one more point here, when Sir said he can relinquish the benefit of FTA, you know what happens there? The FTAs are tagged in ESENGIT with the bill of entry for the particular item. Even you relinquish your title, that FTA, what you have attached in the ESENGIT to that particular bill of entry has to be defaced. It means they are ensuring that the FTA submitted by you is of no use tomorrow. It is not that you relinquish the title. They also stop you by not going back to the department. As FTA is defaced. And whatever proof is given later on, it will be applied only prospectively. It cannot go back. That is how the is made. That's the next difficulty for the trade. Coming to the Rule 5, they can request for information from the importer. Of course, in Form I, which has got 3 sections. One is Section 1, which gives you the guidance how to fill up the form. Section 2 needs to be completed after filing the bill of entry. Of course, Section 3 to be completed before the arrival shipment or before the bill of entry. See, today, I can't pay a bill of entry. I can't wait for this information. Otherwise, I'll be hit with late filing penalty. If I file with the documentary evidences what I have, then I have a query under Rule 4 saying that under Rule 5 you produce Form 1. Even I prepare the Form 1 and give back, then the details in Form 1 they are asking for supplementary documents, which sometimes the manufacturer will be very much reluctant to share to importer also. What happens? The entire rule has caused an importer be a responsible person for claiming FTA benefit. That is how it is viewed by the department as well as by the, of course, by the department, I can say. The next one is the verification request. Of course, the verification request is of departmental consequence. Now we will go to Rule 4. You can see that origin-related information to be possessed by the importer. It's a new requirement. Earlier it was not there. And for which what details I need to give in Form 1 to demonstrate that origin criteria, that is the regional value content. See, what we call of regional value content and what is to make it more precise, that I will tell one small example. If a particular commodity is wholly obtained in that particular territory, say for example, I will take Malaysia. Then what happens? The entire goods is originating from Malaysia. Then the entire value of the goods becomes eligible. For wholly obtained, there is no regional value content addition. When you go beyond wholly obtained, when you go on land in what you call non-origin materials, all this complication starts. The moment it goes to non-originating materials, then the value portion will start. The RBC will start. Once the RBC starts, then there are 2 types of percentages to be maintained. One is the minimum value addition is 30%, or the non-originating material should not cross 60%. This is how the law is framed. If you can see any notification under this FTA, whether it can be Asian or what you call SAFTA or SIPA, go to any other FTA notification, this is the base. The minimum value addition in the country should be 35%. As Sriram was specifically telling that, yes, earlier the verification mechanism was taken care by the rules specified under non-tariff notification. Today, now they have included this in the Act and passed the rules and make these rules to take over the non-tariff notification. I think probably somebody should chat in the court. Because one section gives you the benefit, other section withdraws that. Because rules is also published under Customs Act. This is what legally, I think Sriram sir can throw more light on that because he's a legal person. But what I'm trying to explain here is when the goods are manufactured using non-originating materials, all types of complication starts. Then the value content, then whether the non-origin material has been imported or sourced inside in the same country or with the neighboring country or with third country, all these questions and all these documentary evidences are called for by the department to verify whether the value content RBC as indicated in your origin criteria in the FTA certificate is matching or not. This is very difficult. As I said, we can file a bill of entry, go pass. These are the declarations which have to be made in the bill of entry. For example, see over the all or in item level. Suppose 10 FTA certificates for one consignment, then I need to have 1 or 2 days to complete the filing of checklist. This time has increased, and this stress it has come because I am not afford to do any mistake. Either or I will be penalized. That is stuck case. See, the late filing penalty is one which is really hurting us on all these FTA consignments, because to prepare this we take a lot of time because it can't be automatically mapped or selected. Declaration with respect to, see, you can say origin criteria as a declaration. This will be getting printed in your checklist as well as in the bill of entry. And against this particular origin criteria for item, you will be mapping your FTA certificate in ECENTIT. This will be verified by the department. If they are satisfied, as per law, as per Rule 4, they can very well give pass out or a pass out. If it is not satisfactory to the officer, can call for the documents. But it is sure that for all cases it should not be called. But unfortunately, for the past 2 months, the amount of even today it has not got regularized. Till today, the struggle continues. Yeah. Then Rule 5. If the officer has got reason to believe, then he will ask for the documents. Then within 10 days, you need to provide these documents. Then he has 15 days time to verify and say whether he is accepting or rejecting. Of course, he has to give both in writing. That is not happening. What they do, they straight away go to Rule 6. They say it has been sent. And if it is sent also, we should know the reason why it was sent. That is also not shared by the department. These are the things which are all challenges. See, when we come across all these things, these are real challenges where we face day in, day out. Of course, it is once it is being referred for those origin countries, again the benefit will not be given under Rule 6 because the verification has to be completed and the result has to come. What happens? Once I get hit here, I'll be forced to go to provisional assessment. Of course, when I go to provisional assessment, 100% bank guarantee is mandated. I can go for provisional assessment. When that would get finalized? Right? A lot of importers who have gone for provisional assessment, even though they are in possession of Form 1, the instance is very clear that you have to continue the provisional assessment with bank guarantee. This is all additional burden. See, that's what I totally agree with Mr. Sriram sir. What he said, it's a total burden. And particularly in ease of doing business, this should have been implemented in a better way. Or rather, as Japanese embassy represented to our Prime Minister's office, that it should be, and the rules of origin, which is issued as a non-tariff, should take precedent over any other rule. Something has to come. Otherwise, this difficult time is going to continue. Section 1 gives you the guidance to fill up form. Section 2 to be filed after bill of entry with these details. Of course, these details will come only after filing bill of entry. Then comes section 3, which is nothing but your content. It has part A and part B. Part A will be for only originating materials, and part B will be for non-originating materials. This is how we need the. And the notification is specific, and the details to be processed by the. If he has procured from a third party the raw material for the final manufacture of goods, he needs to give those details also. It means it is not only the details of manufacturer who has supplied the goods to him, but any supplier in his country has supplied raw materials to that manufacturer. Those details are also being called out now. See the difficult situation, how the importers will ask the details from their overseas manufacturer, or whether he will be ready to give the details. time for all. That is how it is going. So, here, if origin of any components used in manufacture of final goods cannot be ascertained, should be treated as non-originating material. What happens here? Say, for example, 50% non-originating materials I have used in the, for manufacture of X product. I could not prove that those where I got this 50% of material from. Then it will be considered as non-originating material. Even though it is sufficiently worked, then you will not be in a position to apply the requirements of percentage in terms of regional value content in the place of manufacture. That's where the challenge is. Of course, wherever non-originating material is there, the de minimis rules is also applicable. And de minimis means the non-originating materials which are used in the production process not cost in the given percentage. Of course, you need to follow closely the respective non-tariff notifications for those FTAs and ensure whether the rule permits de minimis option to you or not. If not, then you can't claim the de minimis option. But yesterday, a day before, I have seen a certificate where the declaration from the importer is wholly obtained. In Form 1, he says non-originating material de minimis operation. This is what how the declaration is. It is high time that we should hold what you call knowledge sharing sessions with the importers, also for the brokers, to ensure that whatever they declare in Form 1 or whatever their importer declare in Form 1, of course, they do not have any control over that, but at least to verify whether the total tallies in totality with the certificate or not before declaration. See, otherwise what happens? It goes to misdeclaration, penalty is imposed. All these things are consequences. Of course, the time limits are very much specific that within 10 days it has to be given, and within 15 days they have to give back saying that whether they accept or not. But what is happening here is that the tags are not followed, and being faceless assessment, even though you go and represent, the replies are not received in timely manner. These are the difficulties which are faced by the trade as of now. Even after the TSK process, that is Turant Swendra Kendra, through which you can approach for any grievances. Though it is approached, it is not acted immediately. Normally, it takes 3 to 4 hours dwell time to come out under RMS. Now it takes 2 to 3 days. That is the fact. And that notification request, of course, the officer can have under Rule 6 that he can clear the consignment, and also post clearance he can ask for documents. If he has got any doubt in genuineness of or authenticity of the certificate, he can refer. He has a reason to believe that the country of origin criterion stated in the certificate has met with the notification conditions, or he can select on a random basis. And any addition that dates the allowed time can be extended up to 60 days. As said, the time limits are no way going to help the trade. If they sit on a certificate for 60 days, who will pay detention damage? Who will pay me container damage? What happens? The importer prefer, okay, if he's a wealthy importer and he can support, he supports with bank guarantee, then he's clear. Otherwise, he has to pay merit trade of duty. Of course, going to refund, the challenge is there of ITC judgment. We have to go for appeal straight away, unless otherwise the notification has a mechanism to give a refund process, even though the FDA certificates are valid for 1 year. And can for 1 year from the date of issue of that. But still, those questions are unanswered. And of course, we have judgments in both the sides. Of course, that is the legal issues which is going on in the department. Of course, implications of non-compliance, Shriram has covered very nicely. Identical goods imported from the same producer will be rejected. Of course, demanding duty, confiscation, immediate thing is suspension treatment of the goods, bank guarantee, and security deposit. Of course, proper officer has got all the powers to do, to verify, to issue costs, to hear you out, and pass orders. And either to allow the benefit or to reject the benefit. Both process is available in the department. Only time will tell how these things are going to be regularized. But if you ask, as of today, the dwell time for filing has increased, the dwell time for clearance has increased. Apart from all these things, I have a section called Section 99A, which is introduced recently, an audit mechanism. And audit can impose a specific query for importer or for a country or for a producer or for a particular commodity or for that particular heading, can alert to verify 100%. Instructions which will be inside, which will be rolled out in RMS, and it will be an instruction would not come into public domain. It will be among the officers. Fact remains that RMS system has been inserted with alerts based on the report based on which this corridor has gone, I would say. There are a lot of instances where the department has faced that FTA submitted by importers are fake, not eligible for that, or the consignments are misrouted from the country just to claim the notification benefit. These things are fact. But is that corridor? Yes, it's a mechanism, good mechanism, but it should have been a better way, giving time. See, in a way that it is not so easy to what you call overcome, I would say. With that, I close my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the useful information and guidelines. Now I'm playing Ms. Smita's video.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Smita Singh, partner in Direct Tax, Customs and Trade in Singh & Associates. Today, I'm going to talk to you about key aspects of the Karuta Rules 2020. India has viewed FTAs as an important tool to enhance its trade and investments and has signed a number of trade agreements with various countries. In fact, India is among top countries in Asia with maximum number of FTAs either in operation or under negotiation or proposed. India is participant to 15 FTAs as on September 2020. The Ministry of Commerce, Government of India is the nodal point for negotiation and finalization of FTA, whereas the Ministry of Finance negotiates on tariff concession, rules of origin, customs facilitation, etc. The Ministry of Finance also issues notifications for incorporation of benefits under these FTAs. Under a trade agreement, as we know, duty concessions are extended only to such imported goods which originate from specified exporting countries. Thus, the rules of origin are an integral part of FTAs which is notified under the Customs Act. Rules of origin are basically criteria to determine origin or source of goods. To claim benefit under the FTAs, an exporter is required to file an application along with relevant documents for certificate of origin to specified authority in country of export. Importers claim preferential rate based on these CEOs provided by the exporter. Now, in line with the global trends, India imposed various trade remedies such as anti-dumping duty, CVD against imports from China. However, it has been alleged that to circumvent such barriers, China is routing its goods through countries with whom India has signed FTAs. During the Union Budget 2020 also, the Honorable Finance Minister had stated that imports under FTAs are on the rise and undue claims under these FTAs are threatening the domestic industry. Thus, an intention of the government to impose stringent checks was very much clear. Accordingly, main reasons behind introduction of Karutar can be summed up as trade deficit due to increase in the preferential trade volumes, rise in fraudulent claim of preferential trade due to misdeclaration of origin, misuse of FTAs causing loss of revenue as well as injury to the domestic industry. Karutar also helps to address the gaps in verification and fixing importer responsibility now in fraudulent claim. Resultantly, Section 28DA was introduced in the Customs Act to make the importer liable to possess sufficient origin-related information. In terms of the Karutar rules, the country of origin certificate issued by the exporting country is regarded as inconclusive on the issue of origin. Detailed procedures have also been prescribed in the Karutar Rules 2020. Under the Karutar, the importer is required to possess sufficient information regarding origin of the goods. In case of doubt regarding origin, now the first point of query is the importer himself. So, Karutar has changed the G2G model or the government-to-government model to B2G model. It is applicable to imports made under claim of preferential rate of duty. The Karutar expects certain information to be possessed by the importer prior to import and filing of bill of entry, which requires greater cooperation between importer and exporter. The exporters are required to provide information regarding how conditions of origin is met, such as changes in HSN, regional domestic value content, or process details, etc. Exporter is also required to provide sufficient information to demonstrate that classification of inputs is different from the final product imported into India. Information of cost and profits is also required to be shared, which may be seen as confidential information by the exporters, and there might be reluctance in sharing such information. Value of non-originating material together with its source is also required to be disclosed. However, one of the most important points to be noted is that rules of origin have an overriding effect on the Karutar rules. Now let me talk to you about the clearance systems under the Karutar. Step 1. Exporter applies for country of origin certificate to the specified authority in their respective country. Step 2. Exporter hands over the country of origin certificate plus the export documents plus the prescribed information under Karutar. Step 3. Importer presents country of origin certificate to the customs authorities in India for claim of preferential rate of duty. Step 4. When the customs has a doubt, they will ask additional information from importer prescribed under Form I of the Karutar rules. Step 5. When the custom has a doubt on the CEO itself and the information provided, they send verification requests to the specified authority in the exporting country. Now, what are these required information? In the bill of entry, the following information is required to be declared: the country of origin reference number and date of issuance of the CEO, origination criteria, indication if there is accumulation or cumulation, indication if CEO has been issued by third country, and indication if goods are transported directly from the country of origin. Relevant changes have been incorporated in the BOE forms. Further, in Form I prescribed under the Karutar, the importer is required to possess specified information such as origin related information. These are required to be possessed prior to or at the time of import. However, there is no need of submission of these information at the time of import itself. Information is required only in case of demand by customs. So it's always better to keep all kind of information relevant in terms of the Karutar handy. Form I primarily focuses on processes through which goods attained origin, whether they are wholly obtained, not wholly obtained, change in tariff classification, etc. Description of originating material used or component used with origination criteria. Further, if origin of material used is not ascertainable, then it is held to be non-originating. In case of any doubt about origin, the officer under the Karutar will raise a query to the importer before initiating verification with the specified authority in exporting country, which takes substantial time. Now let's talk about the timelines for seeking information under the rules. Notice for information is to be issued by the proper officer within 5 years from the date of filing of bill of entry. The response to this notice is to be submitted by the importers within 10 working days from the date of issuance of notice for information. The custom authorities are now required to accept claim of the noticee if origin criteria is found to be met within 15 days from the date of importer response. If importer response, however, is found insufficient to conclude origin criteria, then the proper officer shall forward a verification proposal to the nodal officer. Thereafter, a reference is issued to the verification authority in the exporting country, which is required to be responded to within 60 days. However, in case importer relinquishes the claim or there is sufficient evidence to prove that goods do not meet origin criteria, the claim of preferential rate is disallowed without further verification by the authorities. Now, preferential treatments are liable to be rejected under the Karutar when there is reason to believe, along with evidence to support, that origin criteria is not satisfied by the imported goods. Further, the verification authority of the exporting country responds with insufficient information or fails to respond within the timelines, which is 60 days. Also, if there is enough evidence on record clearly indicating that goods imported are not meeting origin criteria, either at the first instance or after information by verification authority. Now, one point of major concern under the Karutar is that in case of any default under the rules, identical goods from the same manufacturer or producer will be deemed to be found in violation of Karutar and Section 28D of the Customs Act. And penalty may also be imposed in case of suppression of facts, willful misstatements, etc. Now coming to the challenges that we may sum up pursuant to introduction of Karutars. Firstly, the cumulative cost and implication for this comprehensive verification process may result in foregoing of benefit of the preferential trade duty by importers, especially the smaller importers. The importer may also choose to forego benefits under the FTA due to incremental cost and implications arising out of any verification. It may also result in rise in disputes in case of unfavorable order regarding compliance with origin criteria. Further, the absence of definition of reasonable care and reasonable reasons to believe may also lead to arbitrary use of power. Thereafter, another point to be considered is that sharing of confidential information of production process of exporter will also be a major point of concern since they are taken to be as confidential information. The period of limitation is equivalent to extended period in case of fraud under the rules. Increase in compliance burden on the importers is very much evident as I have already discussed. Now, to avoid the challenges that we have just now touched upon, what are the steps that an importer may take in order to avoid any hurdles? Detailed due diligence regarding information is very much required. So, a preemptive diagnostic review of the documents will prepare one for any kind of questions posed by the authority. One may also, as a precautionary step, see that import contracts should now include indemnification clause. Further, to safeguard itself, an importer may also seek declarations and undertaking from the exporter. Now, lately, the CBIC has issued circulars and instructions to tap the arbitrary use of powers under the Karutar from time to time and issued the instructions on 17 December 2020 in order to address the concerns raised with regard to apprehensions on arbitrary use of power by officers in absence of the definition of reason to believe and reasonable care. So, in terms of the instructions, the situation where information must be sought or inquiry to be initiated under Karutar is when the proper officer has reason to believe that origin criteria prescribed in the respective rules of origin have not been met. Secondly, if the same is pointed out by the national risk management systems. Other factors where information may be sought or inquiry may be initiated under the Karutar are sudden change in import trend of a commodity, suspicious profile of exporter, amendments to duty rates, and specific intelligence alerts, etc. Now that's it from my end on the Karutar rules. I hope you found the discussions informative and of help, and I thank you all once again for taking out your time for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'm requesting Mr. Ravi Shekhar Jha on SME Trade Compliance and Logistics from SGXM Tech Private Limited. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Sharanya. Good afternoon, gentlemen. First of all, a very happy new year to all of you once again who have joined in late. I'm currently located in New Delhi, so we are in two parts of the country. One is hot, one is cold. So just allow me if I just slightly cough in mid of the presentation. So I'll start my screen first. Just allow me to do that. Let me know if you're able to see my screen. Yes. Are you able to see my screen, gentlemen?
Just coming up, Mr. Jha.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, we can see now.
Thank you, sir. So, as Sriram sir, Bharadwaj sir has already spoken extensively about the implementation of Karutar, the constraints what the trade is going through these days because of the implementation of Karutar, and the extensive guidelines. I think that's our perspective that even a lot of custom officials themselves are not clear about the implementations and the procedures that has to be followed in implementing the Karutar. That's my personal opinion though, right? I could be wrong, I could be right in that when I say this. Basically, as the rule itself says that administration of rules of origin and trade agreements. So this is directly correlated as in the set of rules are defined under the rules of origin, which should be commensurate with the trade agreements that currently India is having, which is broadly 15 of them are the free trade agreements prevailing at the moment. There is one unilateral duty-free tariff preference also, which is in place. And now, under this Karutar rules or the rules of origin, as we generally can say it, based on which the Karutar is further framed, says that the domestic value addition should be minimum of 35%. However, in case of Japan, they say as it should be minimum 40% to consider the goods to be originating from that particular exporting country. So what are the two types generally that we know is the non-preferential agreement rules of origin and the preferential, and the preferentials are further classified into two segments of economic partnership segment and the generalized systems of preferences. So in executing I'd like to show some stats which is available in the public domain, right? That's a stat from the IceGate portal, wherein it says that currently we have got 250 EDI locations across India. And if I talk about the number of bill of entries which are filed in December 2020, that the stat says as 3,44,715 bill of entries were filed in the month of December across India, across all the EDI locations, which means the volumes that are already coming in, right, to ascertain on each and every case-to-case basis and to implement Carrot Tower will be really tough for any agency. That's one point, right? This was one reason why they reasonably felt that let's not keep this responsibility to ourselves. Let put the onus on the importers as well. That was the frame. You can say one of the reasons why the authorities plan to do it. But what was the primary motive of doing that is more important. As in, we all know that we are going through the so-called government's call for Atmanirbhar Bharat and vocal for local kind of campaigns which is going on. The idea is to create self-dependency in terms of manufacturing, but how that will happen is another aspect altogether, which we will not take it up in this current session. But then the Honorable Finance Minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, had quoted in one of her speech in the Parliament, stating that there have been undue claims of FTA benefits which have passed through to the domestic sector, so which requires stringent checks. So in context to that, certain provisions are being freshly incorporated into the Customs Act, right? Now, what as I would not go into the detailing of that, the reason being Sriram sir and Bhardwaj sir has already done that in the past. So, but when we talk, as Sriram sir and Bhardwaj sir rightly said, that would also require a lot of sensitization and training in terms of the supply chain teams, right? And not just on the part of the importers, but even on the part of the customs, as I believe so, right? Because they also need to sensitize and train their officers equally to handle and to, because the objective of this you can say current regime, they are also promoting ease of doing business. And certainly if there is a process which is not familiarized with the trade or with the departmental, you can say, setup, that will certainly not be an ease of doing business in India, which will go counterproductive rather, right? In terms of cost escalations, damage detentions, timelines, because as normally a appeals process would not take less than 45-60 days, which is I'm saying on the very upbeat side of it, the fastest turnaround. It could be even more, maybe in few months. So we don't know at this stage what it can be like. But then as I also said sometime back, that it provides for a basic level of due diligence on the part of importer to satisfy himself or herself whether the goods that they are procuring are actually originating from the country from where the shipment is supposed to originate, right? Or it is getting loaded. As Sriram sir gave an example of a goods originating from Thailand. So let's understanding it from a slightly a better perspective. Suppose me as an importer, if I'm importing a consignment of say soya sauce, right? So soybean is mostly produced, the highest manufacturer and producer of soybean is US and Canada and not Thailand. So the input material has to come from US to Thailand to produce the finished goods. So in that entire process of manufacturing, what is the component of input material that is coming from US? What is the local procurement of the material to create the final finished goods? These segregations has to be clearly defined, first of all, right? So when you come up with that value proposition that these were the X materials which has come as an input, additional input from overseas countries, and these are the locally procured materials. So it's just like, I would not say it's too cumbersome. Yes, initially it is, but then we also have to practically understand one thing. I'll just quote one example over here that I believe that would suit an understanding. We all are aware that when we are applying for advanced authorization licenses with DGFT, right? As a manufacturer, we give our bills of material wherein we do certain segregations that what are the indigenously procured materials and what are the imported components out of that, right? So when we are already doing these things for the last few years, it's just that we need to also sensitize and take our suppliers on board. That was, these are the sets of rules now which is being implemented in India. We would certainly require your assistance on this part. So it's not as you can see on this particular slide provides for a basic level of due diligence, which I have specially highlighted. The reason being, due diligence is not just for the importer. The importer also has to sensitize his internal logistics and supply chain team as well as the supplier end. And uh, yes, one example what I think Bhardwaj sir had given. If I'm an importer who is into the manufacturing or directly sourcing from a manufacturer, I would have a less tedious process compared to a person who is importing from another trader from somewhere, because that gentleman would not be in a position to supply all these necessary documents which is required as per Karutar. So yes, going forward, we can expect certain kind of amendments being done into this rule subsequently by the authorities, as it was also given as an instruction to the multiple field formations by the CBIC in the month of December 2020, as Bhardwaj sir had said earlier also. So the idea is importers should require and should possess certain basic sets of informations already taken from the supplier overseas. And in doing so, there are certain, we as a collective measure, as a trade body, can also act as an information and knowledge sharing platform for the importers and the members, stating that these are the set of rules, these are the set of documents, they can be standardized. As in, most of us, we would also acknowledge the fact that on a global platform, if you talk about an agency like ITA or a World Customs Organization or FITA, they have already started implementing standardized systems of documentations wherein the templates are already there. So equally, that kind of, you can say, involvement has to come from the industry and also on the technology platform. Well, what exactly, this is what we are trying to do at SJ Exim. We are trying to simplify the processes and the Exim compliances in terms of standardizing the templates, the documentation, and the flow of the process. This is exactly what we are trying to do. And logistics being one of the part of it, we are also in the process of aggregation in that segment. But nevertheless, as we all know that earlier the shift was the onus of, you can say, uh, implementation of the rules and origin was between government to government, right? So this preference has now shifted rather from not just government to government, but now a second layer, as Sriram sir rightly said in the beginning, another layer of, you can say, a validation is there as business to government. So the business is equally responsible for ensuring the compliances related to Karotar, right? As now, I would not like to repeat the same information again, as Section 28 DA further provides for verification of origin from foreign authorities, temporary suspension of preferential. These are some of the, you can say, repercussions that can come under different sections and relevant rules. So that's in short, but at the same time, yes, Form I has to be understood in a holistic way. So one has to also understand the supporting documents which are required along with Form I, right, which has to come from the source, right, from the origin, and importers have to actually redefine their ecosystems. That's the reality of the day, though the government may come up with amendments, but at this moment, the industry is already facing this challenge, right? And Rule 4 is, as again, it's a repetition of the same information which we have already heard, to possess sufficient information about the origin of goods where preferential tariff treatment is claimed. to help guide importers and also to indicate the scope of such information. So as I said sometime back, this Form I has to be supported with the sets of documentation which has to be sensitized to every stakeholder who is involved into the entire process of importation, right? Right from the supplier to the importer, the CHA, the logistics company, though logistics company would not be directly responsible for ensuring the compliances on this, but yes, then the CHA is one important aspect of it which has to be sensitized and trained on this part in terms of adherence to the Carota rules. So, and the last one is as again, the timeline which has been set. If an importer is claiming any preferential tariff benefit under this Garota rules, the set of documents that which he has produced and submitted through e-Sanchit to the customs authorities has to be retained with them for the next 5 years. So that's a kind of, you can say, a scope where we see ourselves coming in again to create a you can say cloud-based system wherein an importer or can have an access and store their complete life cycle of documents pertaining to each and every respective shipment, right? So in doing so, we are trying to equally facilitate the trade and simplify things for the customer. As I would cite three major notifications. One was the rule itself, which was notified on 21st of August, and another 30 days was 30-day period was given to sensitize the different stakeholders, which was much less. I acknowledge this part, which was much less. In fact, we also do this kind of the licensing pertaining to the drug controller office. So the initial act, the Drugs and Cosmetic Rules 1945 was amended, and the Form 43 registration was mandated as per the notified rules in 2010 itself. However, it took Government of India, they gave extension for another 3 years for different stakeholders to understand and come on board and then start the implementation. And it was finally came in effect on 1st of April 2013. So coming from that experience, I do see a scope that the government should have given some more time for the stakeholders to come on the same page, understand the regulations, and then gradually revamp their internal processes to roll it out seamlessly, which unfortunately has not happened. Another two notifications and one circular, notification number 81 2020 and circular 38 2020. So this, well, as we all know, to conclude with, a rules of origin has a set of, you can say, notion attached to it, which is basically used as an implementation tool and a measurement tool in terms of commercial policies of government, right? To come to a conclusion whether an anti-dumping duty or a safeguard duty should be implemented or not in certain cases, to determine whether the preferential treatment is being meted out to the importers or to the country of origin under the rules of origin, or a particular country should be given a most favored nation or not, right? And obviously statistics is another major thing that the government will be looking towards too, right? To capture data and information based on the number of litigations which is coming up, maybe on the number of arbitrations which is required to handle the implementation of the operational parameter of Karotar. And yes, one important aspect of it I would like to highlight over here is the labeling compliances. As you all must be already aware that recently Government of India, the customs have also started demanding the legal metrology package commodity certifications for importers for any pre-packed commodity which is coming in as an import in India, which is strictly being now followed in most of the major custom houses in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, I'm sure, right? Because we have done licensing for multiple clients across India for LMPC registration. And obviously these, as we equally know that there is a GEM portal also, which is being operated by Government of India, which is for procurement of services and product from the trade, MSME sector particularly, right? To support the trade in terms of getting business within the domestic market. So one objective of this Karotar implementation is also to ensure that the product which is being sold on to the government procurement processes, either through GEM or in any direct procurement methodology, does meets the requirement of rules of origin as well as the compliance requirements pertaining to the labeling part. So that's one part of it. Secondly, I would also love to present here about what exactly we are trying to do in terms of facilitating the business, right? As a we are purely into the consulting segment as well as technology part of it, right? We are not into the operations or executions or delivery of cargo or custom clearance or anything of that sort. So we first understand the processes for a client, how they are currently doing their business, right? In doing so, then we come up with a possible iterative software designs and enterprise solutions to develop the product, make the process flow easier, seamless, as in we must be already aware about Zoho. What are they doing currently? They are also in sync with the e-invoicing system of GST, which has been implemented recently, right? So they have tried to simplify and create a platform to do business seamlessly in terms of, you can say, invoicing or billing. So that's exactly what we are trying to do in terms of consulting on foreign trade when we say consulting. So the third is that to maintain that momentum and to continuously build up and improvise on the platforms that we are creating for customers. So that's in short. I would also like to present my team over here, right? That's me, Ravi Jha, SME Trade Compliance and Logistics. That's Mr. Ranjit Kumar. He is responsible for the customer success modules. Mr. Siddharth Yadav is the CTO, Chief Technical Officer, and Mr. Suman Bhargav is a qualified CS and one of the co-founders of this company. So now, what exactly we are trying to dole out in terms of services? We assist in SCM and logistics automation. We assist on exim consulting, and we have come up with a new concept of license as a service, right? We must have heard software as a service, SaaS. So we are coming up with license as a service, right? Licensing is one major segment of work that we do for our clients in terms of obtaining certain regulatory permits. As I said in the course of my discussion, that Form 43 is now a mandatory import cosmetics in India. Likewise, there are multiple, more than 716 items which falls under the mandatory BIS certifications, right? Again, these are the parts of compliance adherence. Now, if you try and correlate BIS licensing procedures, even in BIS licensing procedures, all the input raw material details has to be given to BIS from the main manufacturer who is sitting under the foreign manufacturer certification scheme. So multiple agencies have already been asking these kind of information from stakeholders, overseas suppliers and exporters. So I don't think there should be much challenge going forward. But yes, again, I'm coming to the same point. The different stakeholders should be given some more time to formalize their processes, simplify their processes, and make things simpler for the trade. And that should be the objective of the government, to make it as ease of doing business. Gentlemen, as I also said some time back, that we are trying to simplify processes in terms of online filing and process flow. So just a snapshot of the two portals that we are operating on currently, which well, one you can see over here as LMPC importer registration, which is legal metrology and package commodity registrations, which I have tried to simplify in terms of online presence, right? So basically, importer can come, upload this, fill up the online form, upload certain documentation, the bare minimum documentation, submit it, make the payments online, and the filing is taken care of by us. We don't need to call up the importer and ask for the multiple documentations every time. And even if certain things are missed out, that will be taken care of over here in the process flow itself. So now we, in doing so we also have a vision to go global with this objective. As in today, Karotar is being implemented in India. Maybe we have a different set of rules in Japan already prevailing. As I said, the minimum origin criteria in Japan, what they prefer under the preferential tariff agreement is 40% should be domestically sourced. Suppose a goods is originating from India and going to Japan, as an exporter, I would be, you can say, obliged to furnish the information that my product has got 40% local content from India, right? So these are some of the things that we are trying to do. So we are gradually also looking forward to standardize the systems globally, and to, when we are rolling out from India, we will also roll out for other countries. That's how we plan to do. And that's one of the automation platforms, again, with regards to logistics and supply chain, that we are gradually, we are coming up shortly, and we are rolling out services. The portal is already live. It will be on cloud again, right? So wherein that's an automation and aggregation of multiple freight forwarders under the same roof, as in an importer or an exporter has an option. As Sriram sir, I hope you don't mind that when I say that DHL has its own system and FedEx its own system, online system already in place. But then there is no system which shows DHL and FedEx under the same roof. That's exactly what we are trying to do at this moment, right? In terms of logistics flow and automation. So it will be based on a simple concept of quote and compare multiple FF, book, smart track, deliver seamlessly, and obviously supported by the billing and the multi-currency invoicing system into the process. Now, that's a broader roadmap how we are planning to go ahead, right? I would not go into the depth of it, and that's our last, but not the least, the contact details of our organization. With this, I would rest my speech here, and would thank all of you for patiently listening out to me. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the informative session about the exam compliances. Now I request Mr. Malavannan from MMTC. He's working as an additional general manager there, and he can share the thoughts about the importer's view. I request you to take it forward, sir. I welcome you, please.
Mr. Malavannan, because earlier I saw him online, but I can't see his name online anymore.
I can't see him as well. So
yeah, earlier he was online though, so not.
Sir, wait for a minute, sir. I'll just ask him to connect again, please.
Thank you.
yeah. So your mic is off, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Saranya, and good evening to all. Let me really, it's a good subject selected by Siki, and let me thank my previous speakers, Mr. Sriram, Smita, Bhardwaj, and Ravi Shankar. Thank you. Actually, it's a very good information passed on by you, the team. It's worth receiving that information. Okay, let me share the problems, whatever we are facing. Of course, there are some, it's a lot of plus points are there. That is, it's one major plus point is it's a time.
Sir, if you don't mind, can you speak up a bit? The volume is very, very low. We can barely hear. We can hear, but it is not very loud. If you don't mind, thank you so much.
Can you hear?
Slightly better, sir. Not sure if it is, what the issue is, but it's slightly better. But yes, please go on. We can hear though, but it is just volume is very low.
Okay, let me proceed. Actually, I just thanked my earlier speakers and for the informations and the knowledge, whatever they shared. It's a really useful program. Now, so even though there are a lot of plus points and positive things are there, what we feel that government should give some more time for
So your mic is off,
Sir, we couldn't able to hear you, sir. Request you to
The mic,
unmute.
unmute, sir. So unmute, sir. You have to unmute. Yeah.
hello.
Yes. Please, we can hear you.
So now presently I would like to share what are the issues which we are facing now. As an importer, we do regular import of gold. Gold is a commodity. Before the material lands, people want to do the trading and we want to complete the transaction. For that, the present this Carota is not helping out. These people now they introduced a scheme called no faceless assessment. Earlier days, we used to get cleared our BE on the same day with concerned customs. Now we do not know, even after 2-3 days, even my local customs is not able to tell us where our BE has gone, BE has gone, and it takes some 2 to 3 days for assessment. By the time I am suffering a lot to do my business because our people, my customers are much interested to do on the day of the business has to start. So 2 days, the wastage is it's almost a loss of business. So that is the one sector which has to be addressed. And I do not know how that EDI, that interface has to be solved, that problem, how government is going to make it fast or make it solve this. So we have to represent, we are planning to represent strongly on this issue. This we are facing. Secondly, for our foreign remittances, for the import products, we want to do on the same day the remittance also. On the day of import itself, on the same day, we want to do remittance. Whereas we find very much difficult with the banks because since they say it is not reflecting in their RBI website for the taking care of the bill of entry, whatever we have filed, it takes time for reflecting 2 to 3 days. So these are the issues we are presently facing. Then coming to other commodities, that 100% inspection, also it is a tedious thing which has to be addressed by this one. Then actually, even though it has a lot of positive things, that is saving of time and that we need not present there, and it avoids that payment of some unnecessary extra expenditure. Everything goes transparent way. But I feel that government has to take some more time to implement in a faster way that rather than getting into the subject in full. So these are the issues we would like to share, sir, with the information. However, I would like to thank Sikhi for giving us this opportunity. Really, I enjoyed the presentation, whatever made by my previous speakers. Thank you, Ananda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the inputs. Now I request the participants to the floor is open for the Q&A. I request participants to unmute the mic and speak.
No, perhaps maybe let me start off with a question, right? And this is more from a curiosity perspective, right? Because when Miss Smita was speaking, she was talking particularly about China, and we all know that there are a lot of trade practices. For example, they use Hong Kong as a re-export hub. I mean, this is not a secret, right? It's been going on for a long time. Is there, any statistical evidence that a particular country or a particular trade bloc, has been targeted in order to, impose this and get a benefit? I mean, is there, does anybody have any understanding around that, situation? Is there evidence that it is targeted against China or Thailand or, a particular trade bloc? Perhaps not. I guess that is more of a economic question, I suppose. Maybe a second set of a question I have again is there any retaliations that you are seeing? For example, if I'm looking at the FTAs we have, and particularly with South America, right? Brazil particularly comes to mind. Right? So Brazil is very notorious for, if anybody slaps a particular rule, they will come right back with the same rule on their side, right? Are we seeing that kind of retaliation from any of the countries that we have FTAs with? I don't know if anybody would do. We have an understanding around that?
So far, sir, in fact, we haven't practically heard of any such, you can say, equal, you can say, slapping of rules from the other end. But then, yes, to an extent, certain categories of goods are being monitored. What we have come to learn is, specifically, I'm talking about China. As your first question was that related to China, whether there is any evidence or any such things or stat to prove that these kind of rules are being targeted to have a block to certain countries, or say goods originating from certain countries. But then officially nobody would say that on the courts, but everything is being said and done in that direction, which is quite obvious. As I said in the course of my discussion also, if you remember, when this Rule 43 licensing was implemented in India on 1st of April 2013, right? At that time also, I would particularly cite you an example of this, right? There have been a lot of, you can say, small-time importers or traders based out of Chandni Chowk and Sadar Bazaar in Delhi, right, who were importing cosmetics and such products from China, and they used to buy in kgs, maybe in volumes, right, not on number of pieces, which was not commensurate with the quality which should, as a customer of a cosmetic, we should expect as a user of a consumer of that product. But then things were getting diverted to India, and they were still able to sell it in the Chandni Chowk and Sadar Bazaar in Delhi. But once this license came into implementation, 90% of such traders have gone out of business. And now you'll find only quality players in this segment, at least in terms of cosmetics in India, I'm talking about. So I would not say that currently there is any stated rule or officially anything on this, but yes, indicatively there is a direction to it, which all of us would acknowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Jha. Thank you. Appreciate that, clarity.
Thank you, sir.
Any other participants? Any questions, please? I mean, we understand. I mean, it's an interesting topic, but also a very dry technical topic, right? I mean, unfortunately, supply chain is not all fun, right? There is a lot of fun, but then we have to deal with rules and regulations, and it's a bit dry, but a necessity for our business. So if there are any questions, please ask.
As you rightly said, sir, supply chain is not a, you can say, lucrative for everybody. Then while I was with GEM, erstwhile with Powerwind Limited, so we had a notion inside in GE saying, boss, logistics is a thankless job when you do that. But then today, it has proven the other way. During pandemic, logistics has kept the world going, right? So there's no denial on that. Because tomorrow morning, if my doodh wala or my, you can say, bakery wala does not deliver the goods at my doorstep, maybe I'm screwed up completely.
I guess, Miss Saranya, I think that's, we don't have probably any further questions.
Okay. So can we sum it up, sir?
Yeah.
Yes. Now I request Mr. Naveen Prakash, Co-Chairman, SICKI Supply Chain Management Committee, to give the vote of thanks. I welcome you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Saranya. Thank you to SICKI, first of all, to asking Supply Chain Management SCM division of SICKI to organize this event, as the request was from the trade about Carota, about the aspects of Carota, challenges, and to get some guidance. So in that aspect, I would like to really thank our guests, more than guests who attended this event, for whom we organized it, and people who participated in sharing their knowledge selflessly. Mr. Sriram coming out of the way, always helping our SICKI, and on this particular chapter also very informative program is informative information is given to us. Mr. Bharadwaj being very frank and open in his talk without mincing any words. So he's been on both sides. So very thankful to him also for making quite interactive. Mr. Ravi also for thanking him to accept it all the way based in Delhi. We found him at the last moment and he really agreed to come forward and share his knowledge with us. Special thank also to Ms. Smita, adding also from Delhi, from legal firm, and especially happy to have a lady in a panel who is very informative, what information she shared for us. Mr. Malarvanan on the customers angle, and difficulties in doing business, even though you call it either doing business. So, however, free trade agreement looks like there's nothing called free. We have to really work to get something free, and a lot of compliances which are a prerequisite from the government side, basically to stop any kind of malpractice. In future, with use of technology, and more importantly with knowledge sharing, things can get a little bit easier. I'm very sure that as we have a lot of takeaways from this event, there are a lot of doubts and a lot of doubts, and we had the curtains which were removed one by one, maybe thread by thread. And definitely as SICKI SCM chapter, we are always available. I think you already have contacts of Ms. Saranya from SICKI. You're free to approach her if on the same topic or any other topic you want us to bring out an event. We are most happy to do so for you. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best for the year ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, participants. On behalf of SICKI, once again, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Naveen, for here, I should say. Thank you, Saranya. Thank you.
Thanks again, Naveen.
Thank you, Bharadwaj.
Thanks, Mr. Ravi. It was very nice hearing from you. It was excellent. I've covered the entire portions of what you call compulsory compliance going forward. And one more thing which I would like to update is that there's an advisory 2 of ICS which was out last week, wherein each and every tariff item is mapped with the licensing LSP authority, so that it is going to be the next issue. I will tell you, it's not tagged 100%. It is on the way. It's like this. I think we will take another year for getting stabilized. I will tell you very honestly, because it is applied for all 8-digit tariff entries.
Yes.
These are all the challenges. See, what the logistic effect is this. See, what happens. See, one side you have to maintain the compliance, and other side you have to maintain the business moving, because every single hit is revenue based. Everywhere it is revenue based. See, as a logistic person, I can't delay in filing bill of entry. Again, the importer is hit and I am hit. If I file a bill of entry and the duty is not paid on the same day of assessment, then interest starts, The moment I pay the interest and go, demurrage starts there. All these things have a Markov chain effect. I hope things get settled soon. Right. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. And looking forward to meet you all again in a similar event. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, Naveen. Sure, Naveen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen
Sure,
sir.
thanks-
for
thanks
having
everyone again.
invited me.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.